honest for being sure, but I'm almost sure that the Methodist Association sold the building to James Naylor, the boy that was partially raised in the community. And he tore the building down. Now, what they did with the material, I don't know whether he used it himself or he sold it or what he did with it, but the association sold him the building. I believe that's right.
But Kenneth has the organ.
Right. It was the old pump type organ. I guess some of us old people remember them. And there were very few people like now that were talented musicians. Then it was a gift in place of being taught out of a book. Most people learned to play then by hand-me-down or inherited or whatever term you want to use. It wasn't a profession like it is now. But most people that did it back in those days were good at it because they put their whole heart and everything in it.
Give us the names of your children right quick before you leave, please.
I have a son, 41 years old, Ronnie Knapp, my oldest son. I have another son, Randy Knapp, 37 years old. Then I have a daughter, Angela Knapp. She lives in Anderson, Alabama. She's 32 years old. Then I have a son, our baby son, is Jeffrey Knapp. He's 22 years old. And all three of our 4 children are married and have children. We have 5 grandchildren, 4 granddaughters and 1 grandson. Our youngest son is about so close to being married, but not married yet. And he's 22 and he's working out of on the oil platforms out in the Gulf of Mexico. And he lives in Alliston, Alabama with the daughter. She lives in Alliston, Alabama and has 2 daughters.
Thank you.
My name's Gary Humphrey, and I'm a member of Malcolm Baptist Church. I was born and raised here. And my mother is Mary Orsaw Humphrey, and her mother and father was Lance and Lamar Orsaw, which were born and raised pretty much here. My grandmother was Pringle. And I don't, you know, I'm pretty young compared to what anybody's supposed to know about the place. But I just want to say some memories of the church, you know, that I have. And Miss Maud Powell, this captures my heart. I suppose a lot of you people know her or knew her. She was faithful, and I promise you, whether she had flip-flops on, it didn't matter. From Bates's Lake, with her little bags, and she'd sit right back there where that gentleman was fixed to sit down now, in the back row. May have been some mud on her flip-flops or whatever, but she came. She was there. And she would occasionally fall asleep. And she was very special to me. I don't know, just for some reason. She had all kind of things in those bags that she would bring to church, and one of those things was an alarm clock. And sometimes the alarm clock would go off. And the preacher, he would have to stop preaching and wait for it to stop. Of course, she never woke up. So, you know, you had to let the clock go on. And then, you know, after that, everything was fine. But I remember also that when I was a child, I thought this building was just about going to fall down. That's been a long time ago, because it was old, even back then. And it had a steeple, a beautiful steeple with a bell, and a string that hung down right up there, the rope. And I would run to church early, because I lived right over here. I would run real early, so I could be the one to jump and grab the bell and ring it. And I loved it. It was great. And sometimes it picked me up a little bit high, but I just ride that rope. You know, it was just so much fun. It was very special. And I also remember my grandmother, Blanche Olson. She sat right over here. And she was hard of hearing, and she's very special to me and everybody else in the community. And we would sing, and everybody would be standing up and singing, and she was always about 4 words behind everybody else. So after the music stopped, we had to wait, you know, a few minutes for Big Mama to finish saying whatever the last words of the song was, but she knew them all by heart. And I guess that's just how it is. That's just some special moments that I feel as a young person.
Are you married?
You know,
Any other names of people? Who are some of the early pastors you can remember?
oh, Brother Croft, Brother Hurst, Anderson, Mama what? Yeah. You need to get this one and this one over here right there.
Larry Blunt,
No.
That's what we got.
Barnes,
Okay.
Hughes, hard to remember.
See, I'm waiting for that.
You tell them about, and they had them up in the church to throw them out, and Miss Mary Johnson would say, that's not true, that's not true. She got mad every time. Well, I'm Elizabeth Bliss now, and this was not my home. I was a city girl, and it was kind of strange at first coming to the country, because the first time I came, they didn't have electric lights. And I remember that my father-in-law, Mr. Vernon, had a light plant, and it would cut on and make a lot of noise, and then the lights would be real bright, and then it'd start getting dim again, and I thought, this is so strange, you know, I couldn't get used to that. The lights being bright and then being dim, and I wasn't used to the oil lamps. I just wasn't used to anything like that, and it was real hard for me at first. But I've enjoyed living in Malcolm for years, and the people are real close. And that's more than you can say for people in the city, because a lot of times we didn't hardly know our neighbors. We liked everybody, and we were, you know, friends, and if we could help them, we would do that. But people in the city aren't like the people in the country. They don't know a lot about each other, and they don't, you know, communicate as good. But like I said, I have enjoyed living in Malcolm, and the people are close, and they seem like they're family oriented.
And you're the wife of
Crawford now.
Crawford now. Okay.
I remember also that it wasn't mentioned, a lot of us had well water or pump water, and we was talking about the electricity a while ago when we got lights and pavement. Well, the thing that impressed me was when we got our city water, and
When was that?
I really don't know.
12, 15 years.
the date.
Been about 20. I'd say 20 years.
About 20, maybe not. That is real good when you have to work on the pump a lot and you run out of water. So that, to me, is something special, is when we got our city water. It's not a whole lot I can say about Malcolm. I think I just about said it all.
I'm Theodore Bowling Pearson, and I was born in 1904 in Marmakill, Choctaw County, lived in Mobile as a little boy, but I've been living in Leroy since 1911. The reason I'm up here, ever since I was a little boy, I've heard my mother speak very favorably of Malcolm. You see, she taught school here for 2 years, and about almost 100 years ago. I think she taught here in 1893, 1894. And most of the time she came down here on the train, and when the depot from Leroy was Carson, and she would ride the train from Carson down to Malcolm. And she boarded with the Jones family, not Mr. Bob Jones that some of you know, but with his mother and father. And she said that Miss Jones really ruled the roost in that family. But also when the passenger trains, the schedule for the passenger trains was not so she could teach school and maybe go back home for the weekend, that she would ride in the caboose of the freight trains, and said the crews of the freight trains were mighty good to her, and let her ride in the caboose from Malcolm to Carson or vice versa. And I thought maybe that would be of interest to you folks here at Malcolm, and I still thank you for voting for me every time I ran for office, and that was many times.
Tell them how long you were superintendent of education.
Did you ask me a question?
Tell them how long you were superintendent of education and what years.
33 years. I was elected 8 times. The first time I ran for office, so I was defeated for representative. But that's a story for another time.
When they tore it down, anything.
What was that?
The old steam trains used to run the railroad through here, used to have a water tank. They used to have to stop every so often and get water. And we had a water tank in our little community here at Little Fall by Creek. And Mr. Taylor used to be the water tender, they called. He'd ride the train north in the morning and water up all the tanks in a district, and in the afternoon he'd catch a train and come back. He lived at Calvert, and the old water tank used to be in the Malcolm community here at Little Fall by Creek.
What was his first name? Do you remember?
Cecil Taylor.
Cecil Taylor.
Right, he was a resident of Calvert, but he worked for the Southern Railroad, I'm assuming until he retired. And probably the only job he ever had in his life.
I'm Rayford Blackwell. I'm not really a native of this area, but I've been associated with it for a long time, as long as most people in here are alive. Anyway, I came from Greene County, Mississippi. My daddy moved into Uniform, Alabama, when I was real small, and I went to school there my first year in 1926 when I was 5 years old. And then we lived from Uniform to over here at Waver, Alabama, and then out here at Sims Chapel, Alabama. And I rode that school bus that Crawford was talking about a while ago, and you that a fellow named Mose Odom, called him Red, built out of 1x6 boards with the school bus. I rode it to Calvert also. And I became acquainted with the Knapp family when I was going to school in Calvert. And from there I used to spend weekends up here at their home when we were small, and then their brother, the Colonel Lee, that is buried back here, when their mother died in February 1936, and right after then we moved to Pritchard, and Colonel Lee lived at our house part of the time. My mother loved him just like she did her other 6 boys. And then he got killed in a car wreck December 20, 1941. And anyway, the Knapp family has been my family for a long time. And we are brothers, we just have different names. And like Wayne said, my son here said, my grandfather on my mother's side of the family was Mr. Henry Allen. And he run the fish count down here for Mr. Bob Jones on Bates's Lake. And he died down there May 14, 1947 with a heart attack. I don't know if any of you remember him or not. He lived out around, did you remember him?
And I went down there that night, he passed away.
Is that right?
That's right. And we brought the lady friend out with us.
Yes,
One of the
ma'am.
ladies there with him. I don't know who she was.
Miss Hodge.
Brought her back, and she spent the rest of the night, and I slept with her the rest of that night. And my husband got up the next morning and carried her wherever she wanted to go.
Yes, ma'am.
I remember it very, very well.
Thank you, ma'am, for contributing that. My brother was on the Pritchard Police Force at the time. He came with the ambulance up here after our grandfather, and we buried him in Pinecrest Cemetery beside our mother and our daddy in Mobile. But I can remember going to school when Mr. Pearson was our superintendent of education, and he was highly regarded by everybody that I ever heard speak of him in Washington County. You've left a great trail behind you, Mr. Pearson. You've left a great reputation. And this Mr. Clarence Lucas, that was the principal at Calvert School when we went there, that we buried, I guess, about 2 years ago, wasn't it, Crawford? Was a great man. In the past number of years, he had, several years before he died, he would come to my house on Christmas Eve night and play the piano for our open house Christmas Eve party. And we had a great relationship with Mr. Lucas, and my wife and I would, after he got down and incapacitated so he couldn't take care of himself, my wife and I would fix a dinner, call him and ask him what he wanted for dinner. We would fix a dinner and go up to his house and have dinner with him in Calvert. And there's been some great people came out of this area. And of course, Mr. Crawford and Dewey and Norman and Vernon Lee's daddy was just about like a daddy to me for many years. And I have enjoyed the relationship greatly. And all you good people up in here that I can remember had a great meaning. Now I wanted to say one other thing. And this has a fond memory to me. And I'm proud to see this one black man sitting here in this church. I want him to know this. I went to church. There was one man came from over here. I don't imagine this man even old enough to remember. A man named Chisel and one named Peter. Used to put down wells around over the country. I used to help Chisel put down wells back in the 30s when we had to drive the wells down, the old pumps. And we went to church out at Sims Chapel when there was one preacher lived in Sims Chapel. And he was a black man named Uncle John York. He preached for the white people and the black people. And we all had our dinners on the ground together. We all went to church together. It had a great meaning on me. It had a bearing on me. Great impression. Uncle John York preached for everybody. It was a great relationship. Now, I appreciate all of you people from here in Malcolm coming to this Washington County Historical Society. And I appreciate all the good things that you have done and what you've meant to our son. My wife and I, she's here also. And we appreciate all the good favor that you've done for our son and all the courtesy that you've shown him by showing up here this afternoon. And I guess that's all I have to say, because I could talk all day on the good things that have happened to me around in Washington County, but that's not relevant to the Historical Society. Thank you, sir.
I'm Wayne Blackwell, president of the Washington County Historical Society for 1992. This is May the 17th, 1992. The following program is going to be the history of Bigbee. We're filming it and we are meeting at the Midway Methodist Church. Mrs. Myrtle Waite, a longtime teacher in the Washington County school system, has headed up this meeting, and we have John and Robert Grimes and several other people from the Bigbee area that's going to talk with us today.
Look fast now.
Expanded over here. I was from Yarba. I was raised in Yarba. I was Mr. Huey Reynolds' daughter, and I married in this community 43 years ago, and so I've been over here ever since. And when Miss Myrtle got sick, I happened to get drafted for this, And so I got it about 7 o'clock last night, and I've done the best I could with her notes. And she had a lot of it up here, and I can't read up there, so with John and Robert and maybe Ernest and some of the others, Miss Simon Jane should know a whole lot. We're going to try to do the best we can with it. No one seems to know how Bigbee got its name, but speculation is that it came from the word Tom Bigbee. Maybe people just sort of shortened Tom Bigbee. Bigbee covers an area of Pine Barn to the north, Talla Creek to the south, and the Picket Dumas place to the west, and Roy and Stevenson's old shop to the east. It was made up of several family settlements, some of these being Nappertown, Reynoldstown, Midway, and Boswell Crossroads. Reynoldstown was settled in the early 1800s. Some of these early settlers were John Grimes, Jim Bart Atchison, some Smiths. Now I did not get their first names, but it was a Mr. Smith, and William Buck Grimes. William Buck Grimes settled near Pine Barn Creek about the late 1700s or early 1800s. He had built a water-powered grist mill. It eloped from North Carolina with an Indian woman. And being from the old stories I hear about the Grimeses, the three things they're famous for back in the old days was wine, women, and song. Sometimes later, some of their later residents were Mr. Milton Reynolds, Mr. Johnny Reynolds, Mr. Emmett Grimes, Mr. Poe Grimes, Mr. Pat Atchison, Mr. George Alton Reynolds, and Mr. Sam Reynolds. Now, do anybody remember anybody else that was there? Some interesting facts about Reynoldstown is the old Jim Bart Atchison house has been moved and completely stored and stands behind Roy Grimes' residence at Bigbee now. And the Emmett Grimes residence is known as the Smith House. And Frank Barkin got married in this house. There's 3 cemeteries in Reynoldstown: the Smith Cemetery, the Atchison Cemetery, and the cemetery at the 3/4 Church, and only one church, which is 3/4. Nappertown was also settled in the early 1800s. Mr. John Napper was one of the earliest settlers. Also, Mr. John Grimes, Picket Dumas, Charlie Dumas was one of the early ones, and I think of Joe Everett, if somebody told me this. The Talla Creek Lumber Company and Thomas, in with Tom Thompson and Clifford Pringle, built the old Wesley Chapel Methodist Church, where now the Wesley Chapel Cemetery stands. And they have, later this church was torn down, and a Methodist parsonage was built from it at St. Stephen's. In recent years, a Pentecostal church has been established on this site, and the old Wesley Chapel Cemetery is well kept. And at this time, I think Mr. Doug D. Merritt wants to tell his part. Since he lives out this way, we'll let him do it at this time.
I'm W.D. Merida, born and reared in Bigbee, Alabama. I'm the 19th of this month, which would be sometime next week, I will be 67 years old, the 19th of May. And I was born and reared right in the vicinities of Bigbee, Alabama, and I expect to die here. I don't think it's no more better or beautiful place than Bigbee. And we all live together, good neighbors and friends, and it's a wonderful place to be. And I've known Bigbee ever since I've known myself. My mother and father used to bring us from about 2 miles north or southwest of Bigbee, up on the hill there, through by Bigbee on our way to Frankville for church on a horse and buggy. I usually would ride in the back. I remember at one time I was riding on the back of the buggy on one one of these old meat cases. You might remember they used to, that meat would come in meat cases, and I wasn't paying any attention. I fell off the back of it, and when they missed me, they was at home. They had to come back and find me. But thank be to God, I survived that accident. That was one of my first accidents. And Mr. Tom Thompson and Miss Stella was two of the most beautifulest people I ever known. They were so nice to everybody. They had no respect of person. And I remember when I was, they had a meal there, grist meal, and we used to bring our corn down there and get it ground and into meal, and we would play around the meal there. When I got to be about 9 or 10 years of age, I got out and tried to work a little. We would saw paper wood. That's when you pinned it up. Some of you might remember when you would pin it up. I wasn't large enough to pin it, but I'd get out there and cut it. And I remember how we would cut that put wood, and Mr. Tom Thompson would be sitting over on the post office, and hot weather, about like it is now, a little bit hotter. We could go there and buy one of those large knee-high drinks for 5 cents. We didn't have the money, but we had a good credit account with Mr. Tall. He would credit us until we got paid off, and we drank it, I guess, all our hood in those drinks, but we enjoyed it. Those fellows out there was cutting paper wood, they would let us help them. And Mr. Tom, he was just nice to everybody. Bigbee just seemed to be a central place of happiness, peace, and happiness, tranquility, with both white and color. That's one thing I like about it. Even back there, they didn't show no prejudice. It was just, people was just people, and we have came so far now, and that's so wonderful. You know, when we can look back and see where we came from and be thankful for it, that's something to be grateful for. And I tell you, the Bigbee certainly can bear the record of leading out in some of those historical events. I remember on one occasion, my dad had gone to Frankwell over on some business. He's come along back right in the edge of town. I heard somebody say at a Roy Stevenson play, some young men came by in a vehicle and threw a bottle out and hit my dad right up here and busted him, knocked the large hole. He went on over there and told Mr. Tom Thompson about it, and he immediately saw that the law checked out and found who they were, and he really gave them a good going over about it. And on another occasion that I've heard talk about years ago, when in the early days of Bigbee, was a sawmill out just past, some of you might know where Mr. Richard Braun used to live back over there. I forget right now what they used to call that place, but Mr. Monroe Ritson, I remember at one time lived over there on the hill. But anyway, it was a sawmill down there. My dad used to pick up mail and carry it from Bigbee to that mill there. And they gave him $1 a day, and my dad really worked. He looked forward for that dollar, and from that he gained a name from it, Dollar Bill. Some of you might have heard people call him Dollar Bill. Well, it was the due to the fact that he carried that mail for $1 a day from Bigbee over to that mill for those people, and they called him Dollar Bill. And so I just wish that I really had some history to say about Bigbee, but those are just some of the little events that I can remember. And then too, Miss Stella was such a nice person, and the whole area around in this area, when they wanted birth dates or death dates or what have you like that, especially when children was born, Miss Thompson kept a record of that, and you could always go there and get a record of what you wanted. And it's just so nice to have the opportunity just to say some of the few things that we can remember of Bigbee, Alabama. We thank you.
Where did you go to church?
We went to church over to Frankville, Frankville Baptist Church. And then too, I would like to say, after you mentioned that, we used to go to school. My oldest sister, before I was old enough to go to enroll in school, I would walk with my sister to school. We'd go through Mr. Tom Thompson plantation, and we would walk. We'd get up early in the morning. We'd go through there. and cross the creek and go on to the schoolhouse, and they would have to turn us out an hour early for us to walk back through there and get back home for night. And I tell you, children just doesn't realize what a blessing they have now to get to school. Some of them don't want to walk a couple of blocks to the bus, but where we walked about 8 or 10 miles to school. And Mr. Thompson was so nice about helping to see after us and what have you, that we made safe going and returning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. W.D. Midway, too, was established in the late 1700s or early 1800s, and some of the early settlers were Mr. Henry Clay Atchison, Almond Tew, Asbury Davis, John Goldman, and a Mr. Brewer. We do not have his first name. And also Mr. Mosley. What was Mr. Eddie and Mr. Shelley's daddy's name? Robert, okay. Robert Mosley, Mr. Robert Mosley. There are two churches here. We have this church and we have the Assembly of God Church. There's 6 cemeteries. One is located behind John Henry Mosley residence. We have the Palmer Cemetery, which is behind the Assembly of God Church. We have our cemetery here, one beside Darrell Dean's house. We have the Atchison Cemetery, I believe is way over in the woods that way somewhere. And the Mosley Cemetery is behind, down in the field behind Mr. Shelley Mosley's residence. And we also have a Powell Field Cemetery, which is down the road up above the Assembly Church, way back in the woods. I've been there once, and I'll have to say it was a black church, and they had torn down part of the church the time that I got to go. But there is a cemetery with headstones, and it is the most beautiful scene from that old cemetery. And you could almost hear the old saints shouting in that church. I believe that was one of the most inspirational things that I ever done, was to go there and look at that cemetery. It dates back to slavery times, and it's just, you can just feel something there. And I really enjoyed my one visit there. Okay, John, do you have something you want to tell? John and Robert, they sort of straddled the fence. They were raised partly in Bigbee.
I'm John Grandad, born up here in Bigbee, raised in Bigbee. 1939 we moved to this community. I remember when I was a little younger, Aunt Carrie Scott, I don't know how many of y'all remember her. She was a colored lady. She lived up here, and she was a midwife, and she was as good a colored lady as I ever known. And we kids used to go to her house. She had her coffin and casket, everything made, and the clothes to be buried in, and kept it in one room. And she wouldn't let nobody go in there but us white children. They let us go in there and look at it. And I remember I'd come down there and she'd tell me the story about she'd been born and she was put on a block and auctioned off when she was 16 years old. And she came to this community. And she'd tell us all about going through the slavery time and all. But there ain't no telling how many children that lady delivered. She was what they call a midwife. I was there to the colored fellow working down before me one day talking there. And he talked to more colored fellas. He said, my aunt that raised me, he said, she's a baby catcher. Some of them asked, said, what is a baby catcher? And he said, I don't know, that's what we call her. I told him, I said, that's what they call a midwife. I'm telling out for him. But I was raised, and Mr. Tom Thompson, he was one of the finest men I ever known in his family. And Miss Myrtle, she taught me right here in this very spot, in school. Miss Ruth Airy right here. I'll never forget her and Miss Elsie. I went to Franklin School, that's where I started. And they were just like a mother to me. I guess I cried more than anybody in the class did. I'll never forget them. They were sweet teachers to me. I love them today. Miss Elsie has gone on to be with the Lord, but she was a wonderful teacher. But getting back to the old settlers, Mr. Tom Thompson, they no telling us, during the Depression,
how many people he kept from starving to death. He had a little store up there, and as long as he had anything, you had something to eat. It didn't matter if you could pay or not pay. Ain't no telling how much people owed that man when he died. I heard him say one time he'd just take the books out back and burn them. And he got a blessing for that. But some of the things I remember about up there, Jack Thompson, Mr. Tom's son up there, me and him grew up together. And we was about 13 or 14 years old. My brother there was about, I guess he's about 5 or 6. So we caught my dad and them all gone one day. And we had a bull yelling out there. We was going to break that bull yelling. Me and Jack got that thing, got the saddle on him, and we got the cold feet. Jack wouldn't get on him, I was going to get on him. My brother turned around the corner of the house and said, "Hey, would you like to ride this bull?" I said, "Yeah, come on." We put that kid on that bull. Jack was supposed to hold, and that bull made a lunge. And Jack turned the rope loose and down through the woods. All I could see was deer heel. A bull's heel. I went running down through and I found my brother. He's standing down there in the bushes. And I thought he was going to be killed, but he just skinned up. But he wasn't hurt half as bad as I was that night my daddy got through with me. I tell you right now, Jack Thompson told me to get one of the worst whippings I ever got in my life. And my granddaddy, he ran the Joe grind. He was what you call a blacksmith. He was a well digger. He was a dentist. I remember one time, Louis Butts, a lot of y'all know him. He come up there, Grandpa to pull his teeth. We kids had the thing you pull him out the yard. And he had 2 teeth he could pull. His jaws were swelled up. Grandpa put him in a chair and said, "Now you get a hold of that bottom round, now you hold on." And his poor thing, jaws were swelled on both sides. And Grandpa got them teeth out there. And he threw them things he pulled it with back out there in the yard. And I guess the antibiotic he used was moonshine, whiskey, and sand. So when he quit bleeding, enough Grandpa poured him about that much whiskey in his glass, and it was moonshine whiskey. He told him, said, "Now you drink this and go home." I don't really make it home or not, but he lived. He hadn't been a few years, died. And let's see. So, oh yeah, Miss Burley wanted me to tell this here. One time, right up here, right past the Midway Church, Dan Grimes and his son Will Grimes come down here visiting around. They're going back home, and they come up off this cloud, and them trees are lapping the road like this here. The old mules, and they want to run away and just hold them. So Uncle Dan, he started praying, and he said, "Lord, if you don't know who this is," said, "this is Will Grimes and his son." And Webb looked at him and said, "Paul," said, "you played the devil now." Said, "You told him who we were." But y'all imagine what kind of life we grind and live. But W.D. Daddy, him, I knew him ever since I was that high. And he was one of the best colored fellas I've ever known. W.D., his daddy and Uncle Jack Carlisle and them lived up there, and Aunt Carrie Scott. And so I guess that's about all I'll tell this tale of my grandpa. Grandpa, he didn't like for us to chew his cane. He had a cane patch not too far from our house. We slept over in my uncle in them woods. I wasn't up about 4 or 5 years old. And they popped his cane down. We chew it, slip around and chew it. Grandpa found it. There's some colored fellows living nowhere, people. And one day there he said, "I'm going to go over there and I'm going to catch them colored people that seen coming in my cane patch." So I had 2 uncles there, one named Odell, one named Sam. Grandpa took off and they run in at the chimney and reached up in there and smudged their face all over the hand. They ran over at the cane patch and they seen Grandpa coming. And they started popping that cane and they started running. And in a few minutes here come Grandpa back. Them boys come running back and they said, "He seen him." Grandpa come back and got his old shotgun and went over and said, to half of the night, them boys were one stealing the cane. When I was about 4 or 5 years old, I helped my granddaddy up here at Bigbee. He had a blacksmith shop. It must have been hot weather. But Grandpa was just a sweating. And we had one of these things, you pump it to pump air to heat your plow points and all. And he had me a piece of timber about that big, about that high. I get up on there and I do that for him. I'd have to put all my weight on it to pull it down. And it was a hot day, and old Dr. Wood, back then, doctors, they rode around on horses. Old Dr. Wood come riding up there, and Grandpa was sweating. He looked up at it and said, "Doctor, where are you going?" He said, "I'm going crazy." Grandpa said, "Get down and hitch that horse. You can walk that little piece."
I'm Robert Grimes. I was born at about a half a mile of Bigbee, up the side of this road. We'd walk over to Bigbee and catch a school bus. The story John wants me to tell, Mr. Murder was hoping I could find a tobacco can and demonstrate it. We get off a school bus in the afternoon. I had a Prince Albert tobacco can. I'd pick it and sing for Mr. Tom Thompson. He'd give me a nickel a dime. She wanted me to bring a tobacco can this afternoon and play it for y'all, but I couldn't find one. But we had some good time back in those days. Everybody was poor. Everybody was good friends. You go over and spend a day with a neighbor or sit down and talk to the neighbor. People really enjoyed living back in those days. And I believe Debbie D mentioned about the grist mill. It used to be right beside the Bigbee Chatham Road.
Right.
And the ones I remember running it was Mr. Ellis Atchison and Mr. Jake Atchison. It belonged to Mr. Thompson, but they ran it for him. We always carried corn to the mill on Saturday. I remember a few times I had to carry mine on a horse, and I wasn't big enough to keep it up there, and it'd fall off, and I'd have to wait for somebody to come along to get it back on the horse for me. And there's a road up here, somebody probably know where it is, they call it the racetrack. People years past used to race the horses. It's kind of a straight road, it used to be, between this road and the Bigbee Chatham Road. So somewhere back in those years, they used to race horses on that road. That's about all that John hadn't told, I think, that I can think of.
Give the names of your family, your parents, and all of your brothers and sisters and things of that nature.
All right, my father was Turner Grimes. Most people know him by. And my mother was Grace Marshall. And I have one brother, John, here, and I have a sister, Erlene, lived at St. Stephen. And Jimmy Dale also lived at St. Stephen, married to Coleman Mosley. Erlene's a widow at this time. She was married to Dick Schramm. He passed away about 2 years ago. As you mentioned, Joe Grimes was a great-grandfather, or was a grandfather, excuse me. And this William Grimes, the Lord was talking about running away with the Indian woman, was our great-grandfather.
Where was the old store located?
Right in the forks of the road where the little store, the small building is now, the post office building. It used to be a large building. Old store was torn down several years. I guess probably back in the 30s, late 30s, early 40s. John mentioned we did go to school. The old building right in front of this building, Miss Alberta Wardell taught 6th grade in one room. Yeah, Mr. Murder taught here at one time before I started down here. For heating, we had a little pot-bellied heater in the middle of the room. We ran all out these woods and gathered lighter knots to fire it with. Sometimes the pipe would get hot, then it'd come out of the ceiling out of the flue. Wonder we hadn't all burned up, but we made it. And I think some of the best soup I ever ate, she told us one day just to gather up what we had at home and bring it. We'd make a pot of soup. I don't remember what all we brought or what all we put in it that day, but I believe that's some of the best soup I ever had.
How many grades did you have in the school?
6,
All in one room?
all in one room. Quite a difference from schools nowadays where they complain about too many students in one grade. But I think we learned the basics of education, math, reading, writing, arithmetic, which I think is the most important. We learned to love each other, was very important. Once a year in the spring, we turn out and go back through these piney woods out here and have a violet picking. We all enjoyed that. That's about all I I can think of.
Do you remember when y'all first got electricity in this area?
1948.
Ms. Myrtle said 1948. I was thinking more like 1947. You remember, Ernest?
It's either 47 or 48.
It was 48. It was 48.
48. It's somewhere right in there.
You remember when this road was first paved?
Yes, it was about 1951 or 52. I was living in Mobile at the time. Anybody else got any questions I might answer?
Well, I want to tell you a little about, when we went to school, you know, we had good bathrooms. That's straight down behind it here. This side of the hill was the boys, and this side of the hill was the girls. That's our restrooms here.
The next community would be the Crossroads community, and from what I can gather, evidently is where Bigbee, the center point of Bigbee really, is what I guessed. Anybody know anything different about it? From Miss Myrtle's description, that's where it was. There was also a Tullow Creek Lumber Company, and then we had Louder's Mill, which is down that way somewhere in these woods. But also in 1906, the Rogers brothers bought the Boswell property and established a store and a post office and built 5 houses, also a sawmill, a turpentine steel, a cotton gin, a grist mill, a stave mill, a blacksmith shop, and a cooper shed for making barrels. This was bought from W.H. Boswell Estate and sold to Tom Thompson in 1920. Houses that are still standing are the Pat Atchison house remodeled. Milton Reynolds' house is unoccupied but still standing in fairly good condition. The Johnny Reynolds house, and it's in good condition and being restored. The Charles Grimes house, Joe Clay Atchison house, Jim Bart Atchison house, and it has been restored and it is beautiful. In the Emmett Grimes residence, which is known as the Old Smith place. And the post office was established January the 2nd, 1880. And the postmasters and mistresses are Francis M. Woodard in 1880, J.S. Grenade, 1881, W.H. Boswell, 1889, Walter Rogers, 1906, Arthur Rogers, 1913, Walter Rogers, 1920, Tom Thompson, 1921, and Jack Thompson. He was postmaster until Jack Thompson took it over in 1954. And the last post office was closed out in 1987, and I happen to be very familiar with that because I was the carrier at that time. Okay? And a black man, and Mr. Meredith filled us in on this, which I guess was his father, brought mail between Frankville and Bigbee and then on to Mary, where he picked up incoming mail and brought it back. Later on it was carried on horseback, and Robert and John's father, Joseph Turner Grimes, carried it this way in 1904. There were many activities that the community gathered for. There was a baseball club, log rollings, Easter egg hunts. Barnum and Bailey Circus came about once a year for 2 nights. Barbecues were held about once a year. Frolics, there were a band by the Nappers brothers, and they, Miss Myrtle got a big kick out of it, said that Sam Grimes used to call them the Napper sisters. And many a night was danced away to the tune of this good music. And the baby boy of this family still plays the piano for the Wesley Chapel Pentecostal Church, and he's almost totally blind. An older member of this family is still living near Chatham, and he was Mr. Edward Napper, and was born in Midway in February the 16th, 1899, and he was the oldest master sergeant in the armed forces. When he retired, he was in service for 30 years. He has a son-in-law that works in the Houston Space Program in Houston. Few people had cars. We often rode flatbed trucks to Yarber to see movies. We chewed sweet gum sap and pine rosin for chewing gum. Telephones was a crank type. Biggee's number was 4 long rings. We used a shuck mop to scrub floors. Sometimes you even made your own brooms from broom sage. Washing was done in tubs. You had a battling block and stick, and you boiled your clothes in an iron pot. Some of the names of the people who've lived here is Boswell, Mosley, Napper, Atchison, Grimes, Reynolds, Pippins, Wright, Dempsey, Easley, Irby, Goldman, Williams, Ward, Elmore, Dumas, Smith, Brewer, Scott, Carlisles, and in the Carlisles there was white Carlisles and colored Carlisle. Seeley's, Robinsons, Merediths, Everett's, Waits, Baxter, Mitchell, Johnson, Caton, Thompson, Pritchard, Dahlberg, Clark, Hayes, Beach, Morris, Ryland, Elmore, Stricklands, Norton, Thorntons, Colemans, Porters, and Bakers. Every family farmed to have milk, meat, and meal. Milk and meal was not sold in the store. Most of the families had cows, hogs, and chickens. They also grew cotton and trout. They also had fruit trees. There was no home ice delivery until the early 1930s. Electricity came in 1948. We had Miss Jenny Reynolds, who served as our nurse and doctor. She was allowed to dispense calomel. If this didn't cure what ailed you, quinine, Grover's chill tonic, Blackcroft tea, Epsom salts, or castor oil would. Mr. Bart Atchison served as our lawyer. He could make a deed for you or could marry you and your sweetheart. Aunt Carrie Scott served as a midwife to the community and was very dear to everyone's heart. School was taught 1 through 10th grade. One year the school ran out of money and Mr. Tom Thompson and other members of the community hired a teacher and set up school in a house near the John Simon residence at Bigbee. Each child's family made them a makeshift desk to use that year. We did not have the poor or the rich in our community. Everyone was trying to make an honest living. I don't think people thought about riches. People did the best they could with what they had and relied greatly on one another. None of these listed today are famous or rich, but each of these have left a footprint in the sands of time. That's all I have, Mr. Clark.
I am Ernest Goldman. I live here in this community. I've lived here all my life. My father was named J.W. Bill Goldman. My mother's named Lily Bell Everett Goldman. I had 6 brothers and 2 sisters. I've lived here in this community all my life. And like Mr. Roberts said, we went to school right here. The first school I went to was right here in an old building. And it was cold back then, John. We walked about 2 miles down the road up here. Old road was muddy, a dirt road. It wasn't a paved road at that time. There's one thing, Wayne, that I'd like to bring out that John and them have a couple right east of here. They used to have a salt mine down there where they cooked salt out back during the war, 1864. They had a huge smokestack down there. They had a kiln. And some of the old logs, they piped it off this river back here. And a cypress log, it was drilled down. And there's some of that log still down there in Miss Emma Jane Mosley's field. Miss Emma Jane, you know where it is, don't you? So the Historical Society might like a piece of that log down there. Melvin, I'm sure would be glad to give it to him. That's about all I have, Wayne. We thank you.
Tell us about your children now.
I have 2 children, Patricia Taylor, who's got 2 girls, Wendy and Donna. and Ernie Goldman, which is not married. One son, Ernest Goldman Jr.
Mention something about the Masonic Lodge, if you could. You were-
Well, I belong to the W.N. Reynolds Lodge, number 900, in Sioux Bell County, chapter number 568 in Franklin. We also have a Scottish Rite Club up there. I belong to the York Rite, the Scottish Rite, the Shriners, and I'm a 33rd degree Scottish Rite Mason in the Valley of Mobile. Thank you, ma'am.
Well, I'm Ernestine Mosley, and I've been living in this community well, now about 54 years. I married Eddie Mosley, which Lola gave the name of his daddy, Robert Mosley. But my mother was a Grimes, and she lived up above Bigbee. I don't know where you'd call it in the biggest community or not. And her daddy were Tom Grimes. And her daddy and John's daddy and granddaddy Joe were brothers. My daddy was a Bozeman, Tom Bozeman, and him and his brother Jim used to, I reckon you'd call it in the timber business, they'd buy and sell timber. And I remember the first car they got was a Model T, and they were both huge people. I know everybody that can remember anything about them has heard this story about Uncle Jim. He did the driving, and Papa sat on the opposite side in the back to keep it balanced. That's what they said. And I remember hearing my mama tell that they moved from, she was born in Clark County, and I heard her tell about moving in an ox wagon up to the place where above Bigbee. It's about 4 miles, I think, up above Bigbee. But they were moving, and they come across a flat, a ferry, or what, it was a flat, I think you'd call it, over toppable. And just after they got across the flat, the oxen run away and just tore up a lot of the furniture. And about this community right here, I heard my husband tell, he knew when there wasn't a church here. Shelley Mosley, he had owned a lot of timber and all, and he had the lumber cut to build the first church that was built here. The one that Robert was telling about with the wood heater and the smoke, the pipe running out. And I heard him tell about the first church they had. He was sitting on a pile of lumber out there. They had it church before they built the church. And as for my family, I have 3 boys and a girl, Melvin there, and my daughter is Nellie Johnson, and one of my oldest son is Aubrey Mosley, and my baby son is Bobby Mosley. That's about all I have to say.
This Rogers brothers that had the sawmill, Robert and John's grandmother, she was left was 4 young children, wasn't it? And how she made her living back in those days, you know, didn't have a Vanity Fair to go to work at now. She run a boarding house where the men that worked in the sawmill stayed, because most of them did not bring their families with them. They was just more or less camp. And she ran the boarding house and cooked for these men. And so it was evidently at Bigbee where Robert's mother and daddy met, because Granny came in here with her family when they established that sawmill here in 1906. And that's what she did, was to cook for all of these sawmill folks.
I would like to give the name of some of my ancestors. My father was Will Merida, and my mother was Mary Elliott. She was an Elliott before she married. And my grandfather was Ed Merida. His wife was Rachel Merida. And I would just like to add to that, my grandmother Rachel gave my mother a single sewing machine. My sister held that machine today, and she's still sewing on it. And believe it or not, I can remember at night, in the quietness of night, that sewing machine would sit over in the corner, and you could just hear it pedal. It would pedal for about 10 minutes sometime before it would stop. And as a youngster growing up, I would be out in the yard playing sometime. It wouldn't be anyone around the house but me. It would start pedaling, and I would try to ease to the house and look through a knothole on the side of the house. The ceiling was just on the outside. There wasn't no inside ceiling to the house we were living in. It was a knothole about that large, and just about the time I'd get about 4 feet of the house where I could look through there, that sewing machine would stop pedaling. And I could walk back about the same amount of steps, 4 or 5 steps away from where it would start back to pedaling. It would stop whenever, maybe about 4 or 5 minutes. A lot of people don't believe that. I don't try to convince you to, but I know it's a reality. And that's one thing sure, the dead know what the living is doing, but the living don't know what the dead is doing. And we really enjoyed trying to catch Grandma Rachel pedaling that sewing machine, but she let us hear us, but she never let us see her. And my great grandparents, they homesteaded the place where we are living out there now. It's 200 acres. Well, it was 108 acres that was homesteaded, and my dad bought 20 more acres, what made 200 acres. And we treasure that place. We just love for people to come out and hunt on it and what have you like that. And my dad used to walk from over there out to Yarba and saw logs for $1 a day, and he'd leave at night and come back at night. And my grandmother on my mother's side was she was Maggie Wiley Elliott. She married Will Elliott. That was my uncle. And many of you might have heard of him if you didn't know him, but he was a coffin maker. And coincidentally, I have the saw and the square. And that he used to make coffins for the people in the area that didn't wasn't able to afford, where people didn't hardly know what buying a casket was then, but he made them. And when a person died in the community, you know about somebody, you could hear the bell ringing, and you could go to Uncle Will and find out who it was if you didn't know who it was. And I just wanted to add that to it because it was quite remarkable for us to witness that particular incident.
Mr. Ed, do you know when you homesteaded the place?
I have it at the house. I have it in papers at the house. I can't remember to give it originally, but I can give it to you. I can get it for you. I have those papers at the house. I treasure those.
It was roughly what year? About 1880 or something?
It was back in 18 something. Sure was.
Where is your place located?
Well, it's west of you know where the water tank over going on Bigbee Chatham Road. Well, just past the water tank, that's where I live, and it's west of me about 2 miles, right due west. Thank you.
Wendy,
It might be interesting to you.
I grew up there, and after the schools were consolidated, I went to school with a lot of boys and girls from this area. When we were doing volume 1 of the history, Jackie Anderson, Maddie, and I were doing some research and went to talk to a lawyer in Meridian, Mississippi that we had been told we should talk to, that he might be able to give us some information. His name was Mr. Tom Goldman. So
after we talked a while, and he instructed his secretary to copy out some information for us. He turned to me and he said, Mrs. Brown, how long have you been doing genealogy? And I said, well, for several years. He said, what families? And I said, well, mainly Jordan and Anderson. And he looked and he said at me kind of funny, and he said, Anderson from Washington County? I said, yes, sir. He said, have you ever heard of Clara Harder? I said, that was my great-grandfather's sister. He laughed and said, that was my great-grandmother. I'm kin to every Goldman and Mosley in Washington County. His father was one of three Mosley brothers. His grandfather, was one of three Mosley brothers. His grandfather was the brother of, I believe you said Bill Mosley. Two of them stayed, he said, in Mississippi, and one came to Washington County. That's the story that he told us. And of course, knowing some of you people and all of you people, and Jackie also knowing some of you, now it was interesting to us and immediately rang a bell when he started talking about Mosleys and Goldmans. Besides being kin to the Andersons, he was familiar with Washington County, had visited in Washington County, and asked about specific people. Most of them are now gone, and I don't remember all of the names. But it was just a real interesting incident that I thought you might appreciate, since Mosley and Goldman are names that are so familiar with this particular area of the county.
Here, I believe it was in 1985, one Saturday afternoon, as I came in from work, this car drives up behind me and said, they're looking for Robert Grimes. And I said, well, this is where he lives. And they said, well, we're your cousins. And when we finally traced it down, they was doing a genealogy. And they were, this Buck Grimes from up at Bigbee had a Buck Grimes Jr., and he left here and went to Texas, and they were the descendants of him. And they had traced us up, and they spent the weekend with us, and we visited the old cemetery and the old home place, and and they moved and lived around Palestine, Texas.
This present building was built in 1957. And the second service we had in this building was my father's funeral. And at that time we had just cleared the cemetery, and he was the first person buried in the cemetery. It was on May the 31st, 1957. I have another tale about the dentist. John was talking about our grandfather pulling teeth. There was a gentleman lived up past Pine Barren Creek named Lige Wright. Said he had a real bad toothache one day, and he came down to my grandfather. He pulled and pulled, he couldn't pull it. So he went over to Frankfurt to Dr. Wood, a medical doctor, and he pulled and pulled, and he couldn't pull it. So he went on back home, and he kept hurting him. He finally got him a nail and a hammer. He put the nail against that tooth and hit him with a hammer and knocked it loose. He came back down and got my grandfather to pull it out. That must have been a terrible toothache. In the beginning of the Assembly of God Church up here began an old brush arbor meeting. Just the side of it there, in three different locations over a period of, I guess, 10 years. They had three different brush arbors. Different ones would come in and run revivals on those brush arbors. People would have church till after midnight sometimes. Nowadays it's hard to keep them in church for hours. Those people really enjoyed worshiping the Lord. I remember one colored family, old Doc Grimes. His family used to come to the brush arbors and sing for them. And there was a lady, I believe her name was Delia Boykin. That sound right, Bill? That's right. She came and sang for me. People just worship the Lord at a big time on those little brush arbors.
Every year, Bishop, want to tell us something?
We had to tell about our baby.
So children, we have 3 daughters and a son. The daughters are Judy, Joey, and Jamie. The son is Randy. Oh, that's nickname, of course. That's what everybody knows them by. Getting back to the story about the Bozeman, they were evidently well off at one time, big timber dealers. Said they spent the night one time at the Battle House in Mobile. Next day when they started out to do the business, they told the managers not to go to any extra trouble for lunch that day, that they were just country boys. And said they was talking to one of the big businessmen there in Mobile one day and asked Mr. Jim Bozeman what was the population of St. Stephen's. He told me it's mostly pine and oak like it was around there.
My daddy, I heard him tell about, used to down here at Peavy's Landing, they go down there in the fall of the year and they cut logs. And when the backwater come up, they float them out and raft them, and they get about 3 or 4 rafts, and 4 or 5 of them men would ride them rafts all the way to Mobile. And they said it'd take about a week to go down the river. And they'd ride them rafts down there, and then they'd catch a tugboat back. And used to, when about the time Mr. Tom Thompson come in here and settled, down here at Peavy's Landing, they had a big warehouse down there. And when the boats were coming up, they'd bring the flour and meal and stuff like that. Not meal, but flour. Back then you ordered flour with a barrel. And 3 or 4 families go together and get a barrel. When the boat got about 4 or 5 miles from Peavy's Landing, they start blowing the whistle. And that meant for you to get the mule wagon and come on down and get your flour or whatever you ordered on the boat. I'm married to Lois Mosley, Mr. Fletcher Mosley's daughter. He was raised in this community. And we have one son, Farrell Grimes. He lives up near Murray. We have 5 grandchildren, 5 great-grandchildren. I believe that's about all I had to know about our community.
Mention about my immediate family, I'd like to tell you about my family. I married now the second time, but by my first marriage, I have we had 7 children, 4 girls and 3 boys. The boys was Emmett, Abdul, and Idris Meredith, and the 4 girls was Catherine, Amanda, and Pearl, Marie, and Stacy Meredith. And by my last marriage, I have 1 girl. Is Rachel Meredith, and my wife have 2 children, 2 girls. Is Carol and Dane. And I would just like to add to the historical benefit of Bigbee. I build monuments. Some of you might like to see some of my work for a hobby. And for many old cemeteries and whatnot like that, that you would prefer going, placing a very expensive monument, I would be glad to make a marker for you and to help maintain the recognition of the historical society of the old cemeteries. And some of you might not know, but Mr. Mason that got killed over in Clark County by those hunters. His father got me to place a memorial at the site where he was killed at. And it was an honor for me to have the privilege to do that because he had married a young lady, some of you know.
It was our daughter.
Their daughter. Well, I'm the one that placed that monument there, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to have did that for them. And I would just like for you to see some of my work. I enjoy doing it. I do my own designing and carve the letters in by hand. Thank you.
Elvin Mosley. This is my wife Bessie here, and Irma Jean Mosley that had previously spoken. That's my mother. We have 2 children, 2 sons. We have 2 granddaughters and the last one is a new one, recently. I don't consider myself as an old frontiersman like the others that have spoken before us, but I've been living here probably about 46 years, and I just can recall some of the things that happened in my early childhood that I can, that's kind of important memories to me. I remember when I was quite small that my daddy had took me and my older brother, we called son. We was fishing at Wilson Landing, down below the mouth of Tola, down close to St. Stephen's, and we paddled from Wilson's Landing up to the mouth of Tola, and I was wondering how we was going to get home. But I won't never forget the trip. We walked all the way from Peebles Landing, up from the mouth of Tola, which is a place called Richard's Landing, from there all the way home, and I won't never forget that. Some of the early memories too that I had was my daddy and my uncle had a lot of cows, and they run open range, and they went ranged all the way back to the mouth of Tola, and just about every summer we would have to, me and son and my uncle would have to go drive them old half, I call them crazy cows. They were half Brahman, half whiteface, or half whatever. And that was a real experience. One of the other things I can always remember my daddy telling me about something that happened to him, and he was about Robert. I can't remember all the story, but I try to put the bits together that I do remember him talking about. He was coming home from Peebles Landing, I think it was, and Robert was sent home to follow them home. And he said that Robert he was younger than they was, but he wouldn't stay up with them. He wouldn't keep following them like he was supposed to. And I think Daddy kind of got a little tired, so he kind of hid over in the bushes, and when Robert did get on by, he squalled out like a wildcat. And he said Robert never did have no trouble following him that on. I remember, I don't, like I said, I don't remember all the bits and pieces, but I remember him talking about that. But I'd just like to say that too, that I've enjoyed the years that we have lived in the community, and we appreciate all our friends. I think that probably some of the best spring water that I ever drank was right there where Mr. Ernest Goldman lives, at the old spring there. That's some of the best water that I ever drank out of a spring.
Well, tell about the night that you and Frankie and Bobby was coon hunting and saw something you thought the world was coming to.
Oh. Well, that happened back when I was just a teenager, a small teenager. Well, I wasn't even a teenager, I don't think. It was me and my older brother's son, and I called my first cousin's name, and everybody knew him. His name was Nyland Williams. The only thing that we really could do back then for enjoyment was to go coon hunting on Friday and Saturday night, or either listen to the Grand Ole Opry, you know. And that's one thing that Mom and Dad didn't really care for us to go coon hunting, because we'd either go with my uncle or either with Nyland, you know. So Nyland, but she always kind of expected to be back at her home about midnight, you know. We was 2 or 3 miles over behind Daddy's pasture over there, a place called Sand Ford. And we had been coon hunting a while, and we stopped at the creek to get a drink of water. So I knelt down there and got me a drink of water, and then my brother got a drink of water. And while my first cousin, Nyland, he was getting a drink of water, I seen things just kind of light up, you know, the sky just kind of lit up, you know. Well, it kind of puzzled me, but I didn't know what it was. Well, it happened about the time that my first cousin Nyland was getting up off of his knees, and he said, and I don't know why we did, but he said, "Run, boys, run." He said, "That's a game warden." And I ain't never been so tired in my life. We run and run and run till we got to Daddy's pasture, and I just couldn't hardly stand it. And just before we got home, he told us, he stopped and he said, now listen, boys, he says, don't tell your mom and daddy what happened, or they won't never go let us go coon hunting together. So the next morning, we didn't know what it was. You know, we thought he knew what he was talking about. We thought it was a game warden pulled up over the hill with the lights on. Well, we wasn't doing nothing wrong. I don't know why we were running. But anyhow, my sister heard on the radio the next morning that it was a meteorite that fell from space, you know, out in the ocean there, something, doesn't it? Just called a big light reflection, and that meteorite made us run because we thought it was a game warden. But anyhow, let Bessie tell you something.
Well, I'm Bessie Mosley, and I've lived here about 27 years now. And like Nevin said, he didn't tell their names, so I'll tell our young ones' names. We have a son that's named Mel Mosley, and he's the one that's got the 2 children. And he's got Rachel Mosley, and the new one that was born Tuesday, her name is Paige Mosley. And then we have another son that's Danny Mosley. He's not married yet, and he's going to college. But what little bit I know of around here was my hearsay. My daddy is A.O. Turner, you all might know, that was the road commissioner. And he used to cat hunt for a living whenever I was just a baby. I don't remember it too much. But he used to come up in this area and cat hunt. And I can remember him saying that he would spend the night at Sam Grimes' house. And he did a lot of biscuits there. He said it was real good. And could always expect to have a good breakfast there. And they were talking about Jim Bart Atchison's house. That was where my grandmother was raised. That was my great-great-grandfather, I guess, his house. And so she was from up in this area, and I'm kin to some of the Atchisons around here. And that's all I know of this area.